in my Canada, we are blessed with all kinds of things that we are in danger of losing because of poor government.
For more than 4 decades,
My name is Mel Hurtig, and I'm an author, former book publisher, former bookseller, and former head of the Committee for an Independent Canada, former initiator of the Council of Canadians, and a bunch of other things too.
What does being a Canadian mean to you, Mel?
And I think we're so lucky that we have our country the way it is right now. People from other countries come and visit Canada. I recently took some people on a drive from Calgary to Winnipeg. And they could not believe the amount of space that we have in this country. And they're so how lucky we are to have such a beautiful country. Gorgeous mountains, gorgeous water, tons and tons of water, beautiful waterfalls, beautiful lakes, and beautiful rivers, and wonderful 3-ocean coastline. Not only that, we have this amazing amount of natural resources that other countries would cover. They would look at what you've got: oil and gas and marvelous wheat fields. That's what makes me angry once in a while when we get these people who want to give our country away. Is why would you give away something like that when we've got so much? And we already share it a great deal with other people. Our foreign aid isn't what it used to be, but at one time our foreign aid was really very good. But now it's declined under the Harper government. It's declined by quite a bit. And I find it impossible to understand why people want to make changes to Canada that would deprive us of some of these enormous assets that we have.
So can you describe some of the changes over the last decades that have alarmed you the most?
If I had to say the one thing over and above everything else that has alarmed me, it's been Harper's destruction of democracy in Canada. We were used to be a normal democratic country, maybe even better than normal. And what he has done is he's turned us into a worse than normal. He has made parliamentary democracy a joke, because whereas one time Parliament was a very important factor in our lives, and members of Parliament could hold their head up high, and we would be proud of what they accomplish and how they accomplish it, and the parliamentary committees would work very hard on government legislation. That doesn't happen anymore. Parliament now, for the first time ever under Harper, has been criticized by the Speaker of the House of Commons for being in contempt of democracy because the way they do things now. Well, there's something really interesting, is that when this man took power, he decided to make changes that would correspond to what his own personal vision of Canada was all about. And his own personal vision of Canada is a hell of a lot different than my vision of Canada. And I think it's a tragedy, really, how far we're moving away from democratic principles under Harper.
In your new book, The Arrogant Autocrat, Stephen Harper's Takeover of Canada, you have a very strong chapter on the environment. And right now, Vancouver, your adopted home, is under a veil of very heavy smoke from wildfires across the province, and there are many wildfires across Canada.
And they're going to get worse?
How do you feel?
Well, I mean, the evidence, it's no longer a matter to debate anymore, as some of the big oil companies would like to tell you, and some of the right-wing politicians in our country would like to tell you. It's a proven scientific fact. Maybe that's one of the reasons that Harper has had a war against our scientists because he was terribly worried that maybe one of them would breathe the word climate change. Among all nations in the world now, we're outliers because everybody else is signing on to these international agreements like Kyoto. And Canada became the very first country to back out of Kyoto. Our Prime Minister is regarded as being anti the environment. I mean, what kind of situation is that? Being anti the environment? My God, our whole life is dependent on the environment. And yet Harper, compared to all other prime ministers or presidents or what have you, regards climate change as nothing of significant importance. And it's exactly the reverse of what we should be doing. Canada, among all countries, should be leading the movement towards stopping the increase in temperature so that our beaches don't get totally flooded, so that the place doesn't burn up in massive fire the way it's burning up at the present time, and all the other impacts. I mean, the impacts on our agriculture are going to be hugely important. And for some reason, this Prime Minister doesn't seem to understand that, and doesn't seem to understand why we've got to get rid of the whole economic environment where we're so dependent on fossil fuels.
Stephen Harper and the Conservatives have presented themselves as superior economic managers and the only ones that are looking out for hardworking Canadians. This is part of their advertising strategy going into the next election. What do you have to say about that?
Well, there have been quite a few books about Harper over the last 4 or 5 years, but I think my book, above all of them, is the best one that demonstrates how, in fact, Harper has been a lousy economic manager for this country. I've got all kinds of comparisons between Canada and other OECD countries, which clearly demonstrates that whereas we once used to be up here, second or third or fourth, we're now down here 19th or 20th. And it's interesting that nobody else has seized on that as proof of what poor managers they have been. And of course, right now we're entering into a period where we're likely going to be looking at another recession. And Harper has failed to take steps to do something important about that. The key thing, he has not been a good economic manager, and he's been trying to sell himself on the idea that he is a brilliant economic manager.
What about the action plan that we've been hearing about for the last several years? There's been many ads.
It's been an action plan, all right, for sure. It's an action plan. How quickly can we get to the bottom of all these different categories? It hasn't been an action plan of the kind that we would like to have. It's been an action plan that destroys a lot of the fundamentals we've always had in Canada about the great things that have been built up over the years by other governments, whether liberal governments or even conservative governments. Some of the money that has been promised never materialized. On the other hand, a lot of the money that's being spent has really not been properly announced, and their record of what they've done with things like the F-35 aircraft, fighter aircraft, I mean, a colossal, enormous waste of money. The rumored and promised icebreakers in the Arctic. Have you seen any icebreakers in the Arctic?
No.
Have you seen the Arctic port that they promised to look after these vessels? All kinds of things that they had said that they were going to do, they haven't done. And among the things they haven't done, is they haven't done anything significant about the word. Here's the word that Stephen Harper, the Prime Minister, never mentions. We got in touch with his office to just confirm this. has Stephen Harper ever even mentioned the word poverty in all the years he's been in the Prime Minister's office? Well, they came back and they couldn't answer the question. And so the poverty level today is about what it was when he took office. And that shows you that he really doesn't care about people who are running out of money. And the other thing that has happened in Canada is the huge discrepancy in the standard of living, in the income and the wealth of the haves and the have-nots. Top Canadians have gotten wealthier and wealthier and wealthier, and the average Canadian has been more or less a standstill in the income for the average Canadians.
The majority of Canadians did not vote for this government. So what is your advice to Canadians? What do we do to save them?
Okay, that's a very good question. Harper did not get a majority he got a majority of the seats, but he didn't get a majority of the votes. And that can continue to be the case. And if that is the case, it means there's always going to be a possible temptation of future prime ministers to behave in the way that Harper's been behaving, in an autocratic, dictatorial, tight-knit form. Like Harper's idea of government is very interesting. His idea of government is forget about the House of Commons, forget about everything else, and government is going to come from my office, from the Prime Minister's office. That's where all the decisions are being made, and that's where Mike Duffy gets a $90,000 check, and etc., etc. That's not democracy. That's not the way democracy is supposed to function.